Having a sample API is a useful tool when learning web development because it gives you something to test your front end against. In this course, we are building a sample API that can be used both locally and via the web. Along the way, we're learning how to build and deploy a minimal API in C#. In this lesson, we're going to deploy our application to a virtual private server, or VPS. We're also going to assign it a domain name so it can be accessed from anywhere using that name. Okay, so let's jump right in and look at our API. First of all, we're going to deploy this API first, and we're going to make some changes because I want to make some tweaks to it because of our deployment. Okay, so let's start off with talking about where we're going to deploy it and what we're going to do with it. So I have already purchased a domain name. Now, I would encourage you in testing, don't just start by buying a domain name. Whenever you have a grand new idea of a new product, a new app, or new thing, the temptation is to buy all the things around it. And it makes it feel like you're making progress, right? You buy a domain name and you set up the email, you set up the hosting and all the rest, and then it falls by the wayside and you do it all over again with the next thing. And before you know it, you have 100 different domain names, you spend a lot of money, and you haven't made any progress in anything. I encourage you to make progress in things first and then buy domain names. But in my case, since we're doing this for a course, I already bought thesampleapi.com. So this will be an active URL you can use as a sample. You can go here and use this web API to test against your applications. We're going to do that in the next video. We're going to create some test projects that call out to the API as well as use the Docker container as well. I've already been using the Docker container personally for some testing, and it's been great. So I purchased this. I use Namecheap. I really like Namecheap. They're simple, they're easy to use, and they're pretty cheap. So I really like them. I don't have an affiliate link here for Namecheap or anything. Just if you're looking for a domain name, that's the place that I go. I don't tend to want to use the domain name you can get from your VPS. I tend to want to go right to Namecheap and buy it. That way I control it. And if I decide to move from my VPS somewhere else later, then I can do that. Now, speaking of VPS, I have a VPS. This is the what's called Plesk, which is actually the server that runs on my VPS. I use a VPS called InterServer. Okay, so I'll give you a link down below. That is an affiliate link, just so we're very clear on this. I use InterServer. I've been using it for years whenever I want to use a VPS instead of Azure. Now I use Azure for practically everything, and the only reason I'm not using Azure here is to just show something different, because not everything in this world revolves around Azure. You might decide you want to use a VPS instead, and sometimes it can be cheaper. Now, you can sometimes pay for that cheaper by not getting as good a product, but there is a place for VPSs, and so I use InterServer. Again, I've been using it for years. There's a link down below. Again, that is an affiliate link. What happens is you don't get charged anything for that affiliate, but I'll get a kickback if you stay subscribed for a few months, I believe. So anyways, what we're going to set up a new domain here. Notice I have 25 total I can do. We're just going to set up a blank website. And yes, I have a domain name. The domain name is going to be thesampleapi.com. I'll copy that. So that's our domain name. The workspace, that's fine. The way it works is the first one you set up, that's the workspace. But I can change that if I wanted to something else. That's the workspace I'll use. And then we're going to do web hosting. So we're going to activate the DNS server. We're not going to work with the mail server. Hosting, this is where it's going to put it in the directory. So the way that VPSs work is they essentially give you one directory and then you can play in there. Typically, you can have a lot of different domains on one server. And that's what you're doing is you're putting all your domains on one server. And actually a virtual private server, VPS, means that you don't have the full server, that somebody else has part two. Like this is a virtual server, not a physical server. So they're very cheap, but it also means that there are going to be some performance bottlenecks if you get too, you know, too heavy in your load on one of your sites or somebody else does. Now, that's not usually a problem, but I just want to point that out. Okay, so we're going to say that the default or preferred domain name is just the sample API. It used to be that www was the standard. It stood for World Wide Web, and it indicated that this is a website as opposed to FTP, which is a file transfer protocol, or other, prefixes. And that was the idea, was we have different prefixes for the same URLs. But we've gone and kind of gone past or gone beyond that. We don't use www by default. Now, it's still out there. I would still recommend you have a www because some people just default to using that. But we're going to use what's called the naked domain, just the root domain for our API. So let's add the domain. Once this gets set up, it's going to set everything up. We're going to have to make some changes on Namecheap to point our DNS to the right location. It's going to give us some DNS servers and say, hey, update these DNS servers and point to the right location. And then it will point our URL in the right spot. Okay, so right now we have to go over and say hosting DNS. DNS is not resolvable. Now, this is why I don't love showing off virtual private servers, because everything's going to be a little bit different depending on your server and how it works. So your server might be different than this. It probably will be different. Now, Plesk is a pretty common dashboard type system, but yours might be different. If it is, then you'll have different places to find these things, but you have to do something similar. So just kind of follow along. This is why Azure is so wonderful, because it works the same way for everybody. But what I've got to do here is, notice here, NS or name server, it says, hey, we're going to use these two name servers. It's A and B. So it's plesk7900a.trouble-free.net and plesk7900b. So what we're going to do is come over here to our Namecheap server, and we're going to say that we're going to not use the Namecheap basic DNS. We're going to use our custom DNS. And it says, hey, what's the web server's names? There's A, and I'll just put B there. We'll get rid of that redirect as well. We're going to say yes. Wait for it. We shouldn't have to worry about the redirect anyway, because of the fact that we're getting rid of the Namecheap DNS. Now, it says it may take up to 48 hours to take effect. That's almost never the case. Okay, I have never seen it take more than a few minutes. In fact, this is a kind of an old message, because I think now it's like 15 minutes or less. But what's happening is it's going to replicate around the world, saying, hey, this is a new place to look for resolving the DNS entries for that domain. And again, there's my IP addresses to the server and all the rest. So we'll get there. It will be hooked up soon. We're going to come over here, and we are going to set up our SSL certificate. So this may have to wait until DNS is configured. We'll see. But it uses Let's Encrypt. Now, it used to be that DNS or SSL certificates were much harder, but with this, the basic Let's Encrypt certificate is good enough. Now, if you're going into production with a application that was something that you wanted to, again, use in production, use for a real purpose, you might want to go beyond just Let's Encrypt. But this is going to be secure. It is going to provide you the security you need for your domain. It just doesn't provide some of the extras that maybe a purchase certificate does. But again, purchase certificates are not free, and they're a bit more complex to set up. But let's just say install. So I need to get my email address. I'll do that. And I'm going to also secure the www subdomain. We could do a wildcard, which would handle anything that we had after. And actually, you know what? Let's just do it. We'll do wildcard. doesn't matter for Let's Encrypt. So that way we can have www, or if we had mail.thesampleapi.com, or if we had test.thesampleapi, they're all covered. Okay. So I'm going to enter my email address in here and then get it for free. And that was it. So what it's going to do now is it's going to go out to, it's going to add the DNS record to our DNS server, and then it's going to check that. We could check that manually, but I'm going to hit continue here, and it should tell us if it finds it or not. That's a little bit quick. We might have to come back to it. That's not a problem. But once that's done, we're now secured. That's it. So we've now secured our website or API with an SSL certificate that is basic, but it will work. Okay, so that's it. We've got our host set up. We've got our DNS pointed to the right location. It's active. Now there's nothing here yet. So if we go to open it on the web, that's the default generated site. Okay, so it does work. The sampleapi.com, notice the certificate is valid. So we could, whoops, didn't want to do that. The certificate right here is valid. It's secure. There we go. There's our certificate. It works. Notice it expires on August 2nd. This is May 4th right now. So it expires pretty soon, but it will renew automatically. So we're all good there. Okay, so that's the current website. It's going to look a whole lot better right now than it does pretty soon. Their API is pretty basic for our domain name. That's okay. We now need to publish here. Now, there's different ways of publishing. So you can come over here in this system. You can use the Git publish. You can use website importing. You can even come over here to get started and use there's import an app or site, upload files. You can use FTP or more. What we're going to do is we're going to do the thing that works everywhere, which is we're going to publish locally for our API and then send the files here. Now, we could do other things besides FTP. We could do FTP, we could do files, but eventually I'd like to have it set up with Git or something else, but that's very specific to this particular VPS. It will be different for every person. I don't want to get into the vagaries of different VPS systems. You want to talk to your VPS, get the documentation for how do I deploy this automatically, maybe using something like GitHub Actions to then send the files using WebDev or something else up to your server automatically. But for us, what we're going to do is I'm going to right-click on my API project. I'm going to say publish. I'm going to say folder, hit next, and I hit finish. Now, I'm going to show you something here. Right now, this is ready to go. We can hit publish, we're done, and this will work. In fact, I'm going to do that in a minute. But I do want to point out, let's show all settings here, that right now we're deploying the release configuration. That's good. .NET 9, that's good. Framework dependent. What that means is it depends on the framework being installed on the server we're deploying to. Now, that's fine for this VPS. This VPS supports, actually runs IIS. So it actually runs Windows if you want. So it runs a Windows server. Now, you can deploy to a Linux server as well, and that might or might not have the .NET runtime installed. So if it doesn't, what you would do is change this to self-contained. That would take with it all of .NET. So that way, you don't have to have .NET installed on your VPS server in order to deploy to it. Now, we're going to leave it framework dependent because of the fact that it is installed, and therefore I don't need to have those extra files. So with that, I'm going to hit save. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit publish. So this is going to publish our application, and it's done. And if you click this link right here, it's going to open up the files where they are. there's all of our files. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of shrink this down a bit, and then I'm going to come back over. I'm going to shrink this one down a little bit, and I come over here to Files. And right now there's 4 files in here. I'm actually going to select all and say Remove and skip the recycle bin. Let's just delete them. They're all gone now, which means the website is going to just give us an error probably. Yeah, it's timing out because there's no files there to load. It's not going to know what to do. We're going to hit this plus button here and say Upload Directory, which allows me to drag and drop. So I'm going to grab all of these, and I am going to drop them onto my screen. It's going to load all the files. So this is the published files. So this is what we published when we did the .NET Publish. Publishing is different than just building. So it's not just release mode, it's actually publish mode, which is a bit different. So now we come back over here, we hit refresh, and we get hello world. So we've got something here that's actually working. So now let's see if /API/courses, is it /API/courses? Let me just check the API real quick because I forget. So it's endpoints, course, and courses. Yes, just /courses, not API courses. That's why. There we go. Looks good to me. That looks like we are loading properly when we go to this URL. So the only thing I don't love is I love to go to scalar/v1, right? Which isn't there, right? So if we run our API, by default it loads to /scalar/v1, but when I go there on the API, it doesn't actually have that endpoint. Why not? Well, let's go over and look at why. So let's close this out and stop for a minute. Let's take a peek in our startup folder, and in the Open API config, we're going to find that use the Open API is only being used in development. We have deployed it to production in release mode. Therefore, this is not getting run. Let's make a change here and actually enable this, because I would like you to have access to see a scalar. All right. So that's the first change I want to make. I want to make sure that is available. But now the other thing is that when we start this locally, it starts on the /scalar/v1. But when you start it on the web page, it's going to default to just hello world, which isn't great. Now, eventually, maybe we'll put some kind of page there that explains what this is, how it works, and how you can use it. That'd be kind of cool, kind of a README page. But for now, what we can do is we can go to our root endpoint and make a change here so that we redirect to that scalar page. So let's take out hello world, and we're going to say results.redirect, and we'll pass in scalar/v1, and we'll say permanent is false. So that's a temporary fix, but that allows us, there we go, that allows us to redirect. So if we were to go back up here to our properties and go to launch JSON, and the launch URL we can just take out. There's no reason to have a launch URL right now. So there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rebuild here, a clean solution first, actually. That way we get rid of this launch.json, which may or may not have been cleaned out otherwise. Let's launch this again. It should still go to that page, even though, and it did, even though we went to the root. So if we go to the root here, it should redirect back, which is perfect. That's what I want it to do. There we go. So we now have a new version. So how do we publish this? Well, we right click and we go back to our publish profile and we publish again. And we can go open that back up, and it's actually still highlighted. We can come back over here. We can come to our server. We can go to upload directory. we can grab this and drag it over, and it says, hey, there's already a directory that exists. I'm going to get lazy here and just remove it all. What you could do is just upload the files and then upload in data, but just remove works too. The only problem here is my website just went down. And, if you're looking to not go down, then there's other ways of doing this. But this works, okay? So I don't mind that I have a minute or two of downtime, especially now I'm first launching. But yes, eventually I want to have a better process for uploading. And again, this is where Azure is so great, because Azure has a way to upload to a backup or a staging site where you test it all, make sure it's live, make sure it's running and all the rest, and then you just swap it over. So you don't have downtime. But now Scalar works. And if we go back to the root of the domain, it again redirects us to this Scalar site. We can look at what the endpoints are. We can do a test request. We can hit send. There's all of the results that come back. Cool, it's working. So we now have our Scalar step. We now have the sampleapi.com deployed. It's all working. It's all testable. We did make a couple of changes to make it a little better. Eventually, like I said, I don't want this to be the resulting homepage forever. I don't want it to always redirect to Scalar. I want that README. We'll do that at some point. But for now, this works. That's why I made it temporary, and I didn't just put Scalar on the homepage or something weird like that. So with that, we now have deployed to our virtual private server using a custom domain name. And now, if you want to try this out, go to thesampleapi.com or even www.thesampleapi.com. Either one works, and you can test it out. You can use this now for testing on any of your applications where you want to say, hey, I want to create a quick test and I want to test out my front end skills. Hey, you can now have an API to test against. Okay, so you don't have to use the Docker container if you don't want. You can do it online, or if you don't want to go online, you can use a Docker container. Either one works. All right, now what we'll do in the next video is we'll actually show off how to utilize this sample API when you are creating front ends, whether they be just HTML and CSS and JavaScript, or whether they are Blazor or something else, even WPF or WinForm, something else. You can call an API from those. So we'll create a UI or two and utilize both the local Docker container as well as this URL for testing. Until then, enjoy, test it out, try it out. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you encounter any bugs or issues. Otherwise, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.